Welcome to another episode of Born to be Dope. I'm your host, Ryan C. Green, and we are here with LeGrand, the host of Keep That Same Green Energy podcast. We've got something special today. We are doing a cross show. We're doing two shows in one, and we want to start off right off the bat by introducing yourself. And I know you got to give your viewers a disclaimer because we're doing something a little different. I know.
It's all good. It's all good. What up, world? I'm LeGrand, hip-hop artist and climate activist, host of Keep That Same Green Energy podcast. And like Ryan said, we're doing something unique here. We're combining the podcasts, getting some exposure to each other's groups or whatever. But the disclaimer that he's talking about is, obviously for the Keep That Same Green Energy podcast, our goal is to be carbon neutral. And so we are in the studio today, folks. So please don't beat me up. This is just a joint thing we're trying out. Right. You know, I'm still going to stand on business as it relates to climate action, sustainability. So, but this will be nice. Just settle in. Let's have a good time.
And for my audience who's like, what are you talking about? Listen, I met LeGrand at the podcast summit, David Shands in Atlanta, Georgia. Great. And we connected. It was like, let's do a show together. LeGrand started talking about what his show was. He was like, he's really a climate activist. And I was like, all right, cool, I'm down with that. I'm no activist, but, you know, I want to talk about being green. And then he was like, yeah, I do my shows outside. I was like, hold on now. That's when I was like, wait a minute now. You real about this, right? Like, you real green. So I was like, listen, we can talk, but we had to make a compromise. So I appreciate you. We're in the middle of like 100, 105 degrees outside. So we came inside. We got minimal lights. And we got to have what we got to have, but we got, you know, this is, I appreciate you for doing this because we'll make sure we get the message out. So
yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I think, you know, just to give people some color, you know, carbon neutral is like it's a unicorn. You're not going to get to it, but just the goal, setting the goal and being intentional about it is the only way we're really going to move the needle and get things done. And so natural light obviously is a low cost way of doing it whether the sun's out or not. And so a good percentage of my podcast is done on rooftops, outside in parks and different things like that. So that's all we're talking about. But this is still going to be good. We're going to have a good time. We're going to learn some stuff. It's all good.
And we're going back and forth. So I know I did the intro, but it's both of our shows. So you can see this in two different places. We're going to both host and ask each other questions, learn about each other. For those who are here with LeGrand who don't know about Born to be Dope, this is the show where we teach you how to be unapologetically great at being you, how to master, magnify, and monetize your unique dopeness to 10x your leadership, impact, influence, and income. So that's what we talk about. And we mix hip hop into that as well. So I want you to introduce yourself to my audience, tell them about your podcast and your mission.
Yeah, so for the Born to be Dope podcast audience, Keep That Same Green Energy is about climate action. I define climate change as what's kind of happening around us. Climate action is what we're doing to kind of stop that or to fight against it. But it has a hip hop twist. It has a hip hop artist, and we try to connect. I don't want to steal all the thunder, but we try to connect a theme with the guest and the music that's produced at the end. Not that we're making all this music about climate action because that's not necessarily marketable, but that's the theme, is that we want to get people in front of the camera talking about what do you know about climate action, what don't you know, and I want people to commit to do one thing. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't have to be buy an EV or something. It could be something as small as, you know, give up beef, or it could be something as small as take 5-minute showers or something like that. But we'll get into that. But that's essentially what Keep That Same Green Energy podcast is about.
And another, I guess, a disclaimer from my end too is that when LeGrand introduced, I said, listen, I don't really know much about it. He said, that's exactly who I want to talk to. So I'm going to be the vulnerable one here. And I know not all, but I know there's a lot of you out there who are me, who you hear about it, but you don't really know, like, what can I really do? What does it really mean? What does it take? So we're going to get into all that today.
And not to jumpstart that, I would just say that, you know, part of, I'll get into a lot of my reasons for doing this, but like when I go to the charging stations or I see people in EVs, it's people that look like us. Mm-hmm. But the narrative is that we don't care about the environment, and that's not accurate. So I'm hoping that this dispels some of that too.
Let's jump right in then. I'm gonna start with that because let's first, I wanna know how you became this, or why this is important to you. Then I really wanna talk about, let's go right into the they not like us. I just jumped in my head. But the people, because I'm thinking, I know a lot of people have EVs. All right, let's just start there. That's the easy one. I don't hear them talking about I got it because of the environment. They think it's cool, cheap, right?
Yep.
So talk to me about how you got started with this, and then what is the what do you see from our community when it comes to being climate activists or being just even aware of what's going on?
So I'll say the first thing I have to, I have to be a little bit transparent in that I did work in the power industry for a number of years, and so that made me kind of like a sheep in wolf's clothing, if that makes sense. So I got a chance to see kind of firsthand. I don't want to say necessarily because they're not the biggest culprits, but they obviously are a big contributor to a lot of the issues that we have with climate change. And then the second one, which was probably more compelling, was because I'm passionate about that, I went to a climate strike. I went to a climate strike maybe about six years ago, and it was totally run by kids.
Wow.
So when I didn't know that, when I showed up, and there were like fifth graders crying, and parents are like emotional because their kids are crying, and I didn't get it until they started talking. And so these fifth graders are saying, there's no plan B, there's no planet B, this is my planet, and everything that they're hearing is telling them that their lives are going to end in like 2045. And so for us, we look at it as like, I've lived a little bit, so if the world ends 2045, but they're just starting to really, kind of get out there and experience life, and that creates a lot of anxiety for them. They're very suicidal. They really look at it as a finite life existential threat to themselves. And that hit me. And then I said, climate change is not something I just found out 6 years ago. It's something I've known for 30, 40 years. And so I failed that generation. And so this was my one way to had a platform as a hip hop artist. I had a platform. I said, the pandemic helped, but it was like you get a change of mindset, and you're like, what do I really want to do? What's my purpose? Let me try to help these folks out. This is my way of penance and giving back. And before I drove an EV, I drove a Land Rover. So I was part of that problem too. Right. And so a lot of it is really penance, and a lot of it is a way to try to give back to that generation is fighting. But what's a fifth grader know? What tools do they have other than their emotion? And it hit me. And so just based on that was the kind of the impetus for me starting this.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So what do you see right now as one of the biggest, give me two or three, biggest, other than those who act like this is not real, maybe that's number one, maybe you want to touch on that, but like you said, I remember learning about fossil fuels in elementary school and how they were limited. I don't remember a lot about climate change, but I remember about just the resources and being limited. So what do you think maybe are two or three things that maybe people aren't paying enough attention to, or don't know enough about, or just are standing in the way of being more proactive in this fight, other than just yelling about it?
Yeah, I get it. So I get challenged all the time about, like, we got bigger problems as a culture, we got bigger things, and I'm like, make it make sense to me. So if the planet is not here, racism ain't gonna be here. So I'm like, so I'm like, I think we just need to do a better job of prioritizing, and we have so much power, economic power as a people, and I'm including Afro and Latinos as well. Like it's where there's so much power we have, but we don't use it the way, and that's why I consider myself more of an activist than a pacifist or an advocate. All this nice stuff, hey, I want you to do one thing, but behind the scenes, what I really want is if I can reach so many people that many people use their political power and financial power to change things, that's what I really want to do, right? That's the Malcolm versus Martin type of thing. But I would say the thing that we don't focus on enough is we're just distracted. We're just distracted with what Diddy is doing. We're just distracted with what the presidential candidates are doing. Right. And at the end of the day, whether they fumble or not, like the planet is still is cooking. So like when people say, yeah, I believe in climate change, but I don't really know what to do. I don't recycle. I don't compost. I don't grow my own food. I eat meat. It's like we're not going to get there. There's no one solve. And I sometimes people will say, well, soil drawdown as a way to do it. I just think that there are a number of things that we could. I'll use it this way. If the nation was under attack, we would move mountains to get things done.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And so I don't necessarily accept the excuse that we don't have the resources and capital to fix this overnight. I think that you think about all the wars and rumors of wars that are going on right now. These folks talk every day about conflict.
Yeah.
Climate change is a conflict that we could essentially solve if we work together. So I just think we're just distracted. We're not prioritizing. And again, I just look at it holistically, whether you think it's dumb or not. If the planet is not here, those problems that you're prioritizing over that, they will not exist.
It seems so simple that you would like. I agree with that. Right, like if we have no planet, none of this matters, right? And I think some people's answer is, well, we're going to find a way to live on Mars. That's their answer. But anyway.
So we can go back and forth, but like, so the Born to Be Dope podcast. So you mentioned a couple different things, and then obviously what connected me at the podcast summit was I heard you had that hip hop element of it, so that's when my ears perked up. But it sounds like you're doing a lot of things to empower people to own what they have inside them and just kind of manifesting it. Is that an accurate way of?
Yeah, absolutely. So it came from, I've been doing professional speaking, writing, all the motivation type stuff for 20 years now.
Okay.
A little longer than that. But my first book was 20 years ago. And in that journey, when I started speaking, the first thing you got to think about, well, you look at all the other speakers on stage. Okay, so I got to wear the uniform they wear, right? Well, I don't like wearing suits, like, right? I don't even have a neck, so wearing a shirt and ties, like, that's tight, or you got to be like them, or you got to fit into this box. I always say this story, like, I did a photo shoot not too long ago, and the photographer was like, give me an executive look. And I was like, I own the business. I am an executive.
I'm an executive.
Right. So whatever look I give you is an executive look. But we have this preconceived notion in our head of what professional looks like, what our industry, no matter what the industry is, looks like. And for me, it was after all these years, it was like, and back and forth, how much of myself do I put into what I do? How much of myself do I allow to show, and just, what am I risking? Because for us, we can't just go out there and always we didn't feel like we could just be us, and that was it. We always got to consider, how much of the white money do I want to get? How is this going to impact that? And all these other kind of things. And it came to the point, right, in the pandemic as well. And just prayer, just asking God, I was like, God, what is your message you want me to take going forward? And it was just like, you're born to be dope. Like, what is me? And it came from the hip hop element, because hip hop is that. Hip hop is against the grain. It's against the machine. It's who we are, and it's just accepted. And we got something to say. We're gonna say it. That's part of me. I do it differently, but it was like I grew up in the hip hop generation. Mm-hmm. So being dope was about just being unapologetically great at being me. Was like, I'm going to be myself and understand that whoever is attracted to that is my audience, and not being afraid of what other people are going to think. So I said, once I started being more comfortable just being me, once I started just showing up how I felt comfortable, and that's when it's like, oh, the door started opening even more.
So that brings up an interesting question, because they're taking everything away from us. They're taking affirmative action away. They're taking these things away. So, but in the sphere of what you just said, what is your opinion about the value of code switching going forward? Because you said some things that triggered me. It's like, okay, belonging, be comfortable in your own skin, but do we want to chase the white paper? And some people equate that with code switching. And there was some interesting feedback from the podcast summit about that too. So I'm curious to see what you think.
My thing now, I've always been kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, corporate America type deal, right? I've never been a good code switcher. I'd rather just be quiet than be fake about it, right? But I know how to, tidbit, we're alphas. Okay, we know how to know how to present ourselves, be professional, and still have party and fun when we want to, right? So that's always been my life. So for me, I'm at the point now because look, we are in desperate times right now. The planet, the politics, everything around. We don't know how long we have left. Yeah. So I'm like, and after the pandemic, I was just convinced that I refuse to hold on to anything else God put in me because I don't know when it's going to end. So I'm like, He put it in me. I need to give. He put it to share. I'm going to put it out there. And again, whoever gets it, gets it. And everybody can't walk that walk. I know. But for those who feel like they can, but they've been afraid, that's where I come in. That's what Born to Be Dope was born, to really give them the encouragement to say, listen, find what makes you special, because that's what's going to resonate. Now, I feel like that scares certain people.
Yep. And
they fight back harder. So we see that in some of the things we see politically, some of the things we see corporately. That scares them. But my thing is, you got to deal with that, and we gonna have to fight. That's what hip hop is. We I hear Chuck D in my ear right now, fight the power, right? And we do it. Everybody does it differently. Everybody's not gonna be on the front line marching, but I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm gonna be on the front line of ownership and owning your voice and just trying to have some kind of financial independence on that way, so that you can so those people can fight that way. So I think that's important, that everybody finds their lane and really figure out how they're going to be themselves and as they're taking it away from us.
I think code switching is a necessary tool, and I, as somebody who's navigated the corporate space for 2 decades as well, I've always had to play that role of being a hip hop artist and also being able to operate in the corporate space. Mm-hmm. And they don't typically blend well. And so I've had to code switch, but I think that if the code switching comes from a genuine place, from a perspective of when in Rome, right? I'm in Rome, so I have to speak. Barney's not going to understand if I use some certain vernacular in the office space, so I'm going to use some jargon that he understands. But I'm not doing it. I'm not going to answer the phone and put my reporter voice on.
That's an authentic. See, I think that's a good place. Code switching to me is like you're doing something that's not you because you're trying to fit into something. But we say all the time, black people on a monolith, so we understand, like, we have different sides of us. We know how to act in church. We know how to act at work. We know how to act when we chill with the boy. Yeah, I'm speaking in generalities, right? So to me, because you put on your work face, that's not code switching it all the way to me.
Correct.
But if you're like, I don't know, you don't like cucumber sandwiches, but you eating them because you want to fit in.
Avocado toast.
Right. Like, now that's code. Now you're not being real. Now you code switching to me. So much. I think that I love that question, because I think that it is. And the thing about it is, we don't the ones that got to do it.
Exactly.
Minorities are the ones that do it.
They do whatever they want. They don't have to do any of that stuff.
Right. We're the only ones that have to do that. But
So we talked about, as part of my podcast, we talked about the themes, right? So I always ask my guests to introduce themselves, because I feel like it's a platform for them as well. And if I introduce them, I may limit what they want to share. But then the second thing I ask them is, can you give me a song or something, a jingle, or something that resonates with them based on their relationship with me as an artist or climate action as a whole? And you shared, which song was
it was Redman, Time for Some Action.
Yeah. Time for Some Action.
It was a unique question. I was like, because I asked about songs too, but you asked specifically about songs as it relates to the podcast and climate. I was like, I never thought about that way. So, yeah.
And you said, so what was your reason behind Time for Some Action?
Because I feel like it's time for action now. I think that, like we've been talking about, this isn't something we can keep putting off. This isn't something that.
Yeah.
My thing is, people can say I agree or disagree. I think it's important or not important, but to act like it doesn't even exist, Like, come on, that's foolish. Like,
Correct.
what kind of person does not believe this? You know. So my thing is we're past the time of debating. It's like, yo, really, our planet is 130 degrees. They said 120 in Las Vegas. I don't know when it's air.
It was 115 in Puerto Rico like 2 weeks ago. That's
they're talking about the hottest recorded days on Earth, and we're talking about, you know, and I think some people
talking about practice.
Right. Shout out to Bubba Chuck.
But you know, and I think it's helpful when you say it that way, because. And your audience doesn't know. So on the Keep That Same Green Energy podcast, what I then do is separately in a segment of the podcast called Spill Bars or Fill Jars, we basically take that song. We're gonna take his song, and I'm gonna chop it up in the MP. You know, do a different version of it, and then give the guests an opportunity to freestyle over it.
I was ready to freestyle.
Sing it. Okay,
I was ready.
We'll lock in. I do them like to do them in church. Either you're gonna tithe or you're gonna spit these bars.
I love that. He's like write the check or spit the verse. I was like,
so I'm just shocked that I haven't had more spitters on the podcast, because I think low key, if I did this at somebody's barbecue and they had a couple drinks in them, everybody would be grabbing the mic. So pause. But but we'll see what happens. But no, I think Time for Some Action was good for me. And the first thing I thought of was Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah.
I was like, that thing was like the theme for Def Comedy Jam for a couple seasons.
And I like Reggie because Redman.
Yeah,
because I mean, he's one of the guys who, I don't think he's underrated, but he's always just been himself. If you talk about unapologetically you, he's always been himself, and like, it is what it is with him.
Yeah, and he's standing on some stuff now, and he's still spitting those bars.
Yeah,
so, and he's been one of the most consistent MCs in terms of bar quality.
Yeah.
Like for years.
Absolutely.
and still doing it. So yeah, I'll definitely look forward to flipping that.
Wonderful. So let me throw a question out at you, because I want to go to a little bit about hip hop.
Okay.
And how it relates to what you do, because you said you were an artist. So going through the hip hop, tell me the impact hip hop as a culture has had on your development. As just not even just in what you do with the climate, just as a person. Like, how did that impact your development in life?
Man, so I'm obviously going to show my age, but I would say that most of the people that know me from my childhood know that if I wasn't in school reading books, I had a boom box on my shoulder, shell toes, bringing cardboard with me. I started as a b-boy, was a DJ for a number of years. I didn't pick up the mic until my boy, rest in peace, Big Will. He used to kind of be my MC when I DJ'd, and so first of all, I'm from Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia, near the airport. It's a place called Sharon Hill, if you know where Corrupt from the Dog Pound originally is from. That's like 2 blocks up from where I grew up, and so growing up, it's either you're nice in sports. You deal with some of that illegal activity, or you had bars, and then we were like the Wu-Tang, like everybody sharpened each other. So that was kind of like the culture. So for me, it started with b-boying, it started with DJing, and then just that whole area, like artists like El Drex, the group Gumbo, like these are just people that for that area just really had a great spit game from the quality of their bars. And so I think for me, the development was, and it's interesting how it ties to what you said about that what you have in you and bringing that authentic you out, is that we've all done this as MCs. As you develop, you start taking on certain styles, or you take on certain personas. We never bite, but we take interpolations and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I got with the group Gumbo, and we really kind of wanted to make sure that we were unique, and Gumbo is Gifted Universal Music being organized. So nice. we were really like, okay, this is us. We don't have to be anybody else but us. Mm-hmm. Spit what you want to spit, be how you want to be. And then that was when I got the confidence to be comfortable with LeGrand and what LeGrand wanted to say, I learned 4 or 5 different languages, so I was able to spit in different languages. Nice. But it wasn't like a gimmick. It was just to challenge yourself as an MC. Hey, I'm going to do a song in Japanese, or I'm going to do a song in Brazilian Portuguese. Just to challenge yourself. And so that kind of became. I ended up they called me Mr. International, because it's like I didn't do an album without doing something in a different language. But I think my development was based in the confidence that you have from knowing who you are, knowing this is a culture that you grew up in, you are intimately familiar with. Nobody can tell you that you don't know the culture. There's no way you can tell. I'm like KRS. No one can tell him what hip hop is. Exactly. How you gonna tell him?
Right.
You've been doing the culture. You've been a b-boy. You've been a DJ. My graffiti hand is not really great. I'll be honest with you, but I at least have done it. And so I think that when you understand foundational hip hop and you're active in it, and you're taking your lumps and bruises and you're putting music out, whether they love it, they don't. I think nobody can really tell you about the culture. And so as you get confident in the culture, I know hip hop I know I'm Afro Latino. It's you know what I mean? It's you know it, that's who you are.
Right.
And so I think from a confidence builder and from a knowing who you are and being comfortable, public speaking is not a problem because of that. You've been on stages. I've been on stages in Coventry, England. People didn't know what I was saying, but after doing all that, I think that's what helped me develop, and it translated into my corporate career. Because I would be fearless. Oh, who you want to do the presentation? You know what I mean? Oh, you need, who wants to talk to the CEO? I don't care.
Right.
That person put their pants on just like I do.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the evolution of just growing up in the culture, practicing and participating in it, sharing it with my kids, and just growing up in it and just being true to it. I think that has been able to help me kind of develop into the professional, into the professional speaking, the fearlessness. Nice. That's I would be the best way to answer.
You made me think about something else while you were talking, because and we talk about hip hop, the culture, right?
Yeah.
Hip hop music, rap music is part of the culture of hip hop. But I want to talk about rap music specifically because I'm thinking about all the things I learned through rap music that I had no idea about.
Absolutely.
When you listen to the right people.
Absolutely.
Nowadays,
where is it?
All you learn about is sex and drugs.
Yeah.
What maybe one thing that you remember learning that had it not been in a rap song, you may have never even looked into it?
Oh, I can tell you a lot of the Afrocentricity of the native tongues and stuff like that, I wouldn't have had exposure to. Either public schools or Catholic schools, they weren't really talking about that. So I would say a lot of the Afrocentricity is not something we would have gotten in schools. I think just some of the family structure stuff that came through was kind of raising the bar for how you should be, how you should be as a father. I think I learned a lot of that from hip hop, and I had a great father as well, who was also a bruh. But I think those are the main things. But the Afrocentricity, man, just that whole era, the PE and tribe era, just the Afrocentricity that was just pouring through those lyrics and stuff like that. That is the stuff I don't think we would have gotten from other places. Even the history, tracing it back to Egypt and further. Obviously, KRS One has been a big educator. He calls himself the teacher for a reason.
Right.
He calls himself the teacher for a reason. I think that there were a lot of things that I learned from hip hop that I would not have gotten from a book, and certainly wouldn't have gotten from class lecture.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about. I went to HBCU because hip hop, via movies and just the culture. I guess it's just so.
You wanted to go to Hillman?
Well, I actually did. I went to Hampton.
Okay.
So I went to Hillman. So ended up going to Hampton University. I was well, I can get all that, but that wasn't the only school I applied to. But Hampton was the one I felt at home with.
Okay.
But but just like you said, it's just that's what I loved about just the culture and the music was just oh wait, what? This is out here? I didn't know this exists. I didn't know this was real. And not all of it was good. Not all of it.
No.
I I'll listen to some ratchet music too.
Of course.
You know, because again, we're well rounded. But it's the balance that I love. You know, so we got all that. And the reason I thought about that is because once rap music became commercial, once certain people took it over and now control the commercial side of it, you know, all we get shown is the negativity in our community. I would wonder how it would be if climate change was the issue that is now back in 85, 87, 88. And those rappers were.
We definitely would have had rappers talking about it. We definitely would have had rappers talking about it. The labels would have been trying to shut it down, but we definitely would have had rappers talking about it. And I know that there are MCs out there talking about it, but you know, as I can profess, like, it is very difficult to make an entertaining, engaging song that really calls out climate change. I've done it. I've attempted to do it quite a few times. And there's not necessarily a market for it yet, but labels aren't interested in that. Right. They're not interested in stuff that's positive. And you made me think about just this recent BET Awards. You know, is getting a lot of backlash for just how
I didn't watch it. Not because I don't watch them, but I just didn't know I was watching something.
But just how unnecessarily, and I don't even want to call it ratchet. It's just that. They just did not want. They just said, "This is the game plan, and this is what we're going to run. We're going to run it all day, and night." And there just really didn't. There wasn't really a lot of diversity in what they showed, and I think a lot of celebrities and others are really calling it out. Listen, let me choose my words carefully. I have never been. I like what BET represents from a historic perspective. Right? And whether Deborah was owning it or a group of white people are owning it, they're not necessarily owning it, right? They're they got to make a profit. I get it, but it is not something that until I see some different content, it is not something that I can get behind 100%. Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. That's the safest way.
And I've got good friends who are in high positions at BET. So I'm not going to say too much about it.
And then there we go. But I'm not trying to take food off anybody's plate.
But I agree that we just need diversity in the program.
We got to do a little better.
Put out there. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So thinking about and kind of getting to the crux of my podcast. So climate change. Mm-hmm. You hear it, and I try not to lead the witness. So I'll say, what is your definition, understanding of climate change? I'll leave it at that.
My understanding is simply that the earth is getting hot.
Okay.
Because of us. Like we are the cause of it. There's a lot of things that we do that are hurting the environment that if we don't curtail, we're not going to have that planet here. The earth.
That's perfect. So you don't say it's a hoax or anything. You believe it's real.
No, absolutely not. I believe in science. I believe in science.
Okay. Okay.
And research. Yes.
And so from a climate action perspective, within the confines of what you can do, what is one thing that you would think about doing differently or doing that you haven't done or continue to do to help in that effort?
That's a good question. And some of the things I do or have tried to do, I didn't necessarily relate to, well, this is climate related. Yeah. It was just, trying to, I guess sort of, but not the biggest picture. Yep. So I definitely, we recycle. Okay. Even though I've heard that they don't be recycling like they're supposed to do recycling. But I do my part, So water conservation is big on me.
Yep.
It's just, my daughter was over recently and she had the water running. I'm like, what are you doing? She was using the bathroom, but water. I'm like, what? If you turn that water off, like, first of all, I got to pay for it. Yeah. Secondly, like, you're just wasting water, and we family. Like, anyway. But my biggest thing that I've been wanting to do, and we're building, we're expanding our business to Atlanta with the plans to move down there.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And
there's no room in Atlanta.
We're going to find. Well, I said wherever we go, Atlanta Metro,
room and no water.
Maybe not in Atlanta proper, but Atlanta area.
Gotcha.
Right. Just better media spot for what we're trying to do. But we have to have a place to be able to plant food. I believe that having food, like I tried one summer where we are now, I dug up like a quarter of our backyard. It was like, I'm gonna dig this up, I'm gonna start gardening. I didn't know anything about gardening, didn't research it, nothing. I was like, by the time I dug it up, I dug up the grass, like, oh, I'm gonna plant a garden. Started asking questions, like, yeah, you should have started that 3 months ago. You already missed it. Like, God.
Missed the window.
Yeah, so I was like, well, put the grass seed back in here, right? But that's always been one of my biggest things is that I want to be able to plant food, eat food that I've grown, and share it. Like, I think that I would love to have a community where we all plant it, and if we didn't have to go and buy produce because I'm planting, lettuce, you plant
squash,
whatever, we can all share and that abundance. So that's my biggest thing, and I can't even tell you how that would impact the environment. I don't know for a fact, but I know that would be something positive.
Yeah, so at a high level, and that's great that you're doing. One is certainly moving to Atlanta for media stuff makes sense. Atlanta's like the new LA for that. Relative to gardening, so where people don't necessarily see the impact is obviously demand and consumption is what's driving this mass production of stuff, which causes big factories to generate all this smoke into the environment. But at its fundamental level, if you're growing your own food, you don't necessarily need to drive to the store, which reduces your carbon footprint. You've got fresh food that you can share with others, so there's less of demand on other things. The one thing I would ask you to consider is maybe hydroponics. So if you consider a hydroponic system, and I'm not saying you have to start it from like one of these Duesi systems that are about $20 or $30, but I have two of them, and I can tell you, I got like collard green leaves this big just from growing out of the system, not even transferring them to the ground.
Explain to the audience, my audience.
Yeah, okay.
Hydroponics.
Okay. So hydroponics is a way of planting that uses a balance of like pH. So basically, instead of soil, you're growing the plants in water, and then the water will have the appropriate pH balance to really drive the nutrients to grow. You won't have weeds, you won't have insects, and if you grow it in these little pods in a system, the system has UV light that it runs for 16 hours a day to grow them from like small seeds and saplings all the way up. And then you can transplant them to your vertical garden, okay. So you don't necessarily need to put them in the ground. Then you put them in one of those vertical systems, and like you can continue to have sustainable food for years. But it almost guarantees that the plants are going to grow. Like it almost guarantees that they're going to grow, and they're not going to have weeds, and it's all contained. And when I tell you it does it quick, it's super quick. It's like if I start with a seed on Monday, I can have a little bit of a sapling on Wednesday, and by the following week, it's this tall.
Wow.
So it's a good way to like just at least get the things growing, and then you can put them in the ground and compost and all that stuff, and it'll take off. But I think that there are a number of people in that Atlanta metro area that are doing these community gardens, and they're sharing their stuff, sharing their food, and I think it's the way to go. But I think ultimately how it translates to climate action is, we don't see what's behind when we flip the switch on or off with lights and stuff like that, but there's a lot involved in that. And I think that it's up to consumers to use less, so there's less demand. And demand essentially is what's driving these factories and power plants to produce more and more energy because you guys are asking for it. And so if you use EVs or stored energy, like for my podcast, I basically sit my storage unit out in the sun with solar panels for about 6 hours. It charges, and I can run four or five devices on it for like 8 hours. So, like again, I just think that gardening is one way, and if that's the one way you want to contribute, that would help.
That's the one I think the one I can do fastest, and where I am right now. Two other ones though. I remember as you were talking. One is the EV vehicle. Hybrid EV. I can't get an EV right now because we live in a townhouse. We don't have a garage. Can't plug it. I mean, sure I could go and sit for an hour at a station. put that in my lifestyle yet. So it's like I got to do more research to get to that level. But the one, too, is solar panels. Like I really want to make sure that we eventually upgrade to solar energy on our home.
Yep.
So those are two things I've looked at as well.
Yeah, I think for me, the climate action and sustainability goes hand in hand. So if you're growing your own food and a surplus of it, it's sustainable. Like you don't ever need to go to the grocery store. You can eat. You're going to survive, right? Same thing with solar energy, right? So if you've got a system that's going to power your whole house, and store some of it, like you're never going to be forced out of your home. Like utilities and stuff like that cost money even in retirement. So if your whole house is running on solar, the solar's not going to the sun's not going to stop shining, and you're going to have backup stored energy. You're good. I don't necessarily think that everybody has to get an EV, but obviously if you do get an EV and it's 100% electric, you're not contributing to the carbon gas that's going into the air. So you're helping. Now, people that will oppose that argument will say, yes, but the Gigafactory, Elon Musk Gigafactory in itself is probably 10 times what a power plant is putting out. So I get it, and we got to just do one thing at a time and start looking at the metrics and see what we're doing. But again, if we got more and more people doing that, I think that it's going to send the message that this is what we want, and then we can start demanding what we want.
Yeah. When you started this journey, what was one of the first things that you was like, look, this is where I'm starting with my climate activism as far as personal actions, and then maybe give the audience something they can start if it's not gardening like me. What something you think is easy is like, look, that they may not even thought it's just this simple. Just do this one little thing right here.
Yeah. So I started one of the employers I was with. It was like two of us had Teslas when they first came. I think I had mine in 2016. And we were like one of the few employees that had EVs. So the company was making a lot of changes just to be able to allow us to charge and stuff like that. And some people didn't like that. Okay. And so we started a sustainable action committee at the employer to begin to talk about why EVs make sense and other things that are coming and how we can reduce our carbon footprint as an organization. And so that's where I started. It's like, I'm going to start where I work. I was spending 8-10 hours a day there. Yeah. I said, let me get around these folks. Because again, just showing up with the spaceship in 2016, a lot of people were like, they wanted to understand, what's the big hype? What's going on? Did you do this just to flex? And that was something we talked about earlier. And no, it was totally not to flex. It was 100% because, one, as I said, I was a sheep in wolf's clothing in the power industry. We were studying EVs for about 2 years before Teslas came out as, this is a market that we can get into because we generate electricity, right? So this is a market for us. So I had studied the technology for like 2 years, like, oh man, this is a great thing to have. Like, this is a great thing to have. And I was driving a Land Rover, so I was killing the environment at the time. So that's basically, obviously it's a flex for some people, but at this point, everybody has Tesla. Like everybody has EVs now, so it's not the flex it was before. But to answer your question more directly, it started with my employer and just starting a sustainable action committee and getting other employees to say, these are some of the things we can focus on as employees at this organization, and then take it back home. And then what I did is I found that there are apps. There are apps out there that you can get that if you're looking to, like during Earth Month, here are 30 things that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint, and it'll challenge you in an app to do it each day. And so you can start building the habit. And so that's how it started with me. Like, now I can tell you I failed miserably at taking 5-minute showers.
Right.
Miserably. Because it took so long for the water to warm up. It's like, I can't even.
You start counting once I get in or once the water get hot.
When's the gun go off? Because I'm like, I needed to be warm when I get in there. And so that was one that I didn't have much success on. But there were there was like 40 or 50, 60 other things that you could do slowly. And again, I walk a lot, so a lot of people think it's because of my climate energy, but it's really because when I first moved to Atlanta, Ahmaud Arbery had gotten killed, and I said, it's not going to happen to me. And so in my neighborhood, for 4 years, I've been walking around twice a day, 21,000 steps, 11,000 in the morning and about 10 in the evening. And so people sat there watching me now.
Oh, wow.
So it's not going to be like, oh, who's this, African-American, running through my neighborhood. No, I live here and everybody needs to know. So it started that way as a safety thing. But now it's obviously kind of like my thing. But I could drive too because I have a Tesla, so I'm still reducing my carbon footprint. But at least I feel better.
Man, that just blew my mind. But that's another whole show. The fact that you got to walk through your neighborhood, 21,000.
Well, Sandy Springs. So I don't know if anybody knows about Sandy Springs, North Atlanta, but and that's not where Ahmaud Arbery was
right,
killed. But just knowing that going into Atlanta, I was like, yeah, it's not going to be me. So I need people to see me as a part of this community, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
So there were some health benefits of doing it that way.
It keep you alive in more than one way.
Yeah, mental health.
Nice. Tell people how they can follow you, how they can support the cause, and everything, how they can keep in touch with you.
Yeah, no, and just to say, I really do appreciate. I do think that this was great to do. I think podcasters need to do more of this, not just to reach other people's audiences, but because you just never know who's going to tune in to certain things, and obviously we all have a mission and we want to reach people where they are. So I'm very grateful for this. I would say for me, I am going to have a launch party for season 1 of the Keep That Same Green Energy podcast. So I'm on Instagram at Keep That Same Green Energy. My website is keepthatsamegreenenergy.org. LeGrand Escape on Instagram for me. And my YouTube channel is Keep That Same Green Energy. But no, I would encourage folks to go to the keepthatsamegreenenergy.org site and just tap in, man. Like there's a lot of resources there. You can often get me in one-on-one or WhatsApp situations just to kind of talk about what's going on. But just hopefully people will get behind the movement. But it's the music is one part of the movement, but it's really the movement that I really want people to get behind. The music is secondary. If you think LeGrand's dope, that's great. But it's more about keeping that same green energy right now.
Awesome, man.
All right. And for my listeners, in terms of tuning in to the Born to Be Dope?
Absolutely. So you can go to borntobedope.com. Follow us on Instagram. That's the easiest way. I am Born to Be Dope. I am Ryan C. Green. So you can follow me at Raji is Dope on Instagram as well. I think that covers everything. We got the YouTube. It's the same across the board as well. So I like to find that one word that's everywhere. I am Born to Be Dope.
Yeah, and you might be able to re-edit this, but just a question about just the connecting the hip hop to your podcast. How do you, because you asked me a question about it, so how do you connect the hip hop to your podcast?
So normally I have a whole segment at the end where it's just totally different what we talked about. So it's a whole hip hop segment that we go. So I have questions. I didn't do it for you.
Okay.
Because we were doing the dual show.
Yeah.
So normally I just had different questions and we just go through hip hop questions and just talk to it that way.
Okay. So, talk about relevant stuff going on in hip hop and
the impact of hip hop on that person.
Okay.
How they were.
How their life was changed by hip hop.
Exactly.
Okay.
How they would develop all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's dope. That is dope.
Yeah. Appreciate that. So I appreciate this. I'm so glad we met. This is also the importance of why you need to go to events, expand your community.
Got to invest in yourself.
Right. Yeah. And I give it up to you because you reached out. I didnn't. So.
Well, if you hadn't asked that question, in the session, I wouldn't have known. So
cool. So there it is. Go to events, speak up when you got the opportunity, and go meet new people.
And network. Don't be afraid to network. Don't be afraid to. I was tired. I was like, oh, I hope he doesn't want to shoot this. It's already 7:30. I was like, oh, please no. But then I was like, I went and slapped some water in my face. All right, let's do it. And he was like, oh no, we can meet at the other studio. I was like, bet. But you gotta invest in yourself, folks, and just keep that same green energy.
All right, y'all. Talk to you soon.
Salute.